What's really going on behind those doors? We actually don't know. The data is suppressed, but we're paying for it. The taxpayers are paying for it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Pure Media Australia. And whether you're watching us via puremediaaustralia.org, Rumble, BitChute, or the Rural Rebel Media page, we want to thank you for joining us and welcome you to the show. Sadly, tonight's guest is not only facing a possible forced future guardianship, something that our viewers know from our reporting is an absolute mess, but she was also the victim of a heinous sex crime. As a child, she was sexually abused, triggering an incest inquiry. Thankfully, charges were laid at the time and some form of justice has prevailed. She went through her life from that point on believing the case was then sealed. But now fast forward to today, and that case has been unsealed, and tonight's guest has had to relive her experience all over again. Here to tell us about what brought that about is Alana Smith. Good evening, Alana, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Wayne. Thanks for having me on tonight.
So this is a very long, complicated and twisted story. I'll get you to go right back to the start, and if you can just tell the audience how it is exactly that you became, or how it is that the NDIS became involved in your life.
NDIS is the least of my worries. They came in only quite recently. But they have obtained and have on my file, which triggered a AAT appeal, the second one in 18 months, 150 suppressed documents from an incest matter trial that was 23 years ago in 2000. How they obtained those, they're not revealing. They've refused to reveal, and they've refused to remove them off the record. That was on or around September of 21. Since July of 20, I've been in the Supreme Court fighting a no-doc lender, being One Liberty Financial. After they gave me a no-doc lend, and after I had a car accident, and I bought two properties after I had a large ex gratia payment from the government for victims of crime compensation. That was in 2001. I thought that was done, got the conviction, and I went on and did my trauma counselling and got on with my life, as it seems. No. Then we roll on into 2013. The lender alleges I defaulted and started court proceedings in the Supreme Court. Against me. I'm a disabled pensioner. I haven't worked since a car accident. Injured my spine in 94. And I thought, yes, I'm going to fight this. They've got no defence. They applied for a possession order. It was dismissed, and the judge said it has to go to trial. Still haven't been to trial. Now I'm self-represented. And out of the blue, in July of 2020, they said, we've now found out that you have a history of incest. And we're going to now be requesting the court remove me as a defendant and add the public trustee, because I'm disabled, and under the Supreme Court rules, any person deemed disabled, either physical or otherwise, can be declared what is in the old term, a ward of the state. So this lender's law firm, which is a government law firm, Norton Rose Fulbright, referred in secret conversations the matter on to the WA public trustee. They put their hand up and said, yes, we will be involved with this. And since July of 20, all of these suppressed court documents that are private, they've all been shared through all these departments and actually weaponized and used against me. So a trauma victim never gets over it. Mine was, at the time in 2000, the second worst incest history case they had heard in the history of the Supreme Court, which is going back to, 1903. They give you a large payout so you can go on your way and buy property and, get over and try a modest property, mind you, and move on with your life. You don't expect that trauma history is going to be weaponized and used against you to declare, you have a mental illness now. You lack legal mental capacity, and your PTSD is now what we're going to call, quote-unquote, schizophrenia. They've done that through the back door. They've obtained these documents illegally, unlawfully. There's no lawyer that's representing me, so they're getting away with contempt of court, Because as a child of an incest child victim, and I come as an adult to court, they're not allowed to release my name. They're not allowed to obtain the documents. They're not allowed to breach the Evidence Act, the Victims of Crime Act, rah-de. But they are. This is my case is 100 times worse than Miss Brittany Higgins. I had the conviction of the rapes upon me. I got compensation. I went on the record. They were found before a jury of 12. There was no allegation. It was a guilty verdict. And yet for that to be used against me, and I'm now fighting for my freedom and my liberty because I was a victim of incest, so therefore I am mental. And it's fucking shocking that they can do this to women who are disabled. They did this to me 23 years ago, and now they're doing it again. They released my court file to Victoria to deny my common law damages in my car accident. And here we are all again, and they're doing it again to silence me. Why do they want to silence me? Because I've uncovered in 4 years of research as a volunteer disability advocate in this state that they are doing the same tactic against other disabled women. And they're being locked up in institutions for 20 years. They're being lobotomized. They're having unregulated lobotomies, unregulated ECT, 30 neuroleptics a day. They're getting 30 minutes of sunlight. I'm getting death threats because of what I've uncovered. But they're killing and murdering these women in these institutions that they call under health advice and for the safety of the community. They need to be in there. They're all incest victims. They've all had large payouts from the state. Could be the church, could be a family member. But why are they in there? Then you have NDIS who jumps on the bandwagon. They're ticking a box saying that they're providing capacity building to these victims in these locked wards, windowless locked wards, when they're providing nothing. So those poor women in there can't speak to you, and the taxpayer certainly doesn't know that that's going on. And how has NDIS got 150 of my suppressed court files on my NDIS file, and they have now changed my primary disability of spinal to psychosocial? I'm in my second AOT in 18 months, and I said, I'm not settling with you, and I'm certainly not settling with this court, who are trying to steal my home and now my liberty, because I'm been the only one that has gone on the record after hearing about Perth's dirty little secret. This is what it's being called over here. Everyone in this state knows they're doing unregulated and underreported lobotomies. They've never stopped. The files on Graylands, there's a 100-year suppression order. Everyone knows, in power, not in power. They're all stating if they speak out, their funding will be cut. So they're not. So they could be a mental health advocate. They could be a mental health law reform. It doesn't matter what their title is. They all know. Why is it only I am going on the record and getting retribution as a disabled person by every government department as blowback, when the ones in power that are there to protect us, allegedly, they know. And they're just telling me, shut the F up and go away because you're going to end up in there, quote unquote.
Now, there's going to be a lot of people sitting at home. They're going to think, wow, this has just been like one heck of a piece of meat to chew on here. And some of it sounds so far-fetched and so, like, unbelievable. It's not funny. I mean, one, they've dug into your history and your past and they've re-victimized you. And I can see that that's basically caused the same amount of trauma that the original act has caused. And
they raped me as an
apologise for that.
They raped me as an adult. So this happened, I went to court 23 years ago. 10 years or so after that, I wasn't thinking about that. I'm in the very same court, the very same court that I got to win, and now I'm fighting for my freedom because I'm mental. I don't know what the Guardianship Administration Acts are of 1990. I don't know what the Public Trustee Act is of 1941. I have no brain because I have a history of incest, and that is offensive. It's demeaning, it's sexist, it is absolutely pathetic that they are pulling this stunt, and it's because the people who are supposed to be advocating for us have been silent. They all know. We have a Disability Royal Commission currently. They're talking about restraints and guardianship and abuse. They're not talking about weaponising incest because I didn't do a submission. These women I know, they didn't do one because they've got no voice. They've got no phone for a start. They didn't go in and speak to them, and they didn't speak to me. So Yeah, I would estimate it's not just Perth's dirty little secret, it's a nationwide secret. It's $1 billion industry, 30 billion every year in assets under the public trustee.
Well, we know we've got a gentleman
growing.
who's imprisoned in Queensland. He needs medical attention at the moment. Like, he's been needing dental care for quite some time, and the hospital won't let him go. I mean, like I said, he desperately needs to have this done, but because he's in the system now and won't give up his last name, this is how twisted and how that they've got 20 Medicare cards for this gentleman in 20 different names. So I don't know whether that means they're collecting 20 separate payments for the man or what they're doing. But if you think they don't imprison people inside these institutions with no hope of ever seeing daylight, our friend
Try
Quinn
going to visit
has
your.
been
Try
in
going
this
to visit.
situation for quite some time now with no chance of ever getting out, because he's terrified that if he gives them his name and his real last name, that the NDIS will step in and take all of his assets. He'll lose his home, which he's probably lost at this point anyway. I mean, there's people at this point in time. I know you said you went back and you saw the report that we did with Antonetta on NDIS failings. In the original title for that video, somebody actually questioned me about it and said, "What do you mean by people presumed dead?" We've got people that have become intertwined with the NDIS and with Guardianship and with all this garbage that haven't touched their bank accounts for years now, that aren't game to show their face in public because they're terrified that the government's just going to snatch them on up and stick them on in a nursing home.
Yes, yes, we have no voice. There's a voice battle currently. We've never had a voice. As soon as you're framed disabled, I don't look disabled. I've got a permanent spinal injury. My neck, if you can see, is not straight. But I don't look disabled, and I don't speak disabled. They're still coming after me. You know the people who are in wheelchairs, who have got intellectual disability? How bad do you think it is for them? It's worse. It's worse. So people really need to wake up. This is going on in your state, in your territory, the gag laws. The gag laws. I'm not under a guardianship order. I'm under referral from a court to get a public trustee as administrator appointed. And they're trying to subpoena, well, they have subpoenaed my clinical psychologist. And he's breached his ethics, he's breached the privacy legislation, he's handed over all of my files from 15 years back. Because he said I was sick of dealing with them. So now there's another complaint. He can't deal with them, but I'm supposed to deal with them. He knows it's re-traumatizing me. He's a clinical psychologist, for God's sake. But he wanted them off his back. He didn't get legal representation.
So what's your recourse from here? What advice have you been given so far?
Just come to the hearing on the 16th and have another chat, part 2 of the objection to the subpoena. He's already handed the documents over he didn't hand them over in front of me. And the judge is going through them. I said, you can't go through my files with the claimant's law firm. I said, there's abuse of process. That's not procedure. I go through it and I've not consented. Not you. You're meant to be independent and adjudicator. Oh, well, we're doing it anyway.
That's astounding.
How many disabled people do you see in court being represented with their rights being violated? Where is these law firms? Where are they? There are none. How many guardianship applications on Auslie do you see represented by a private law firm? Zero. Zero. You got the Shine, you got the Morris Blackburn, Slater and Gordon. Top 3. They sue the government for every detail. They don't touch disabled. We don't get our foot in the door. Our stories aren't getting told. They've never been told. Never been told. When did you last hear a precedent for a disabled person? Last time I saw a Disability Discrimination Act matter was, 15 years ago. It doesn't happen. We are not worthy. We are not on equal footing, as the Australian Law Reform Commission said in 2014 and made all their recommendations. And now we're at the end of a Disability Royal Commission that was extended to 4 years because there was so much abuse submissions. They couldn't handle the workload. Really? Is it going to be like the Aged Care Royal Commission when no one is prosecuted and they're still dying? And how many aged pensioners sued the government for breach of care? Gee, 0? Like the Banking Royal Commission, how many of those bankers got named, shamed? How many lost their jobs? A couple. How many went to jail for the 200,000 that lost their homes? Yeah, and this government's changing that? Really? Really? I doubt it. I really doubt it. Once you're on the government system, it seems you're less than, you're not worthy, and if we can get back any payout that you've had, then we will. The redress scheme, currently, that's on foot. That's another big problem. You're going on the record now, what you've been through. They'll wait 2 years, they'll wait 5 years. With me, they waited a lot longer because I wasn't on their radar. But once I started advocating for others that they had harmed, then they soon came after me. But generally, it's 2 to 5 years after you have a payout. They come knocking. They estrange you from your family. No one wants to hear that you're at battle with your own government. You know, I'm gonna have to think of other ways to get around this because there's so many parties involved that have got conflicts of interest. I'm a British citizen. I'm gonna have to go to the King, get him involved. They can't take my land when I'm a British citizen. So, you know, I'm not going to get justice in this country. Certainly not going to get justice for the harm they've done upon me. I have to go out of this country because they've all got their ears closed. They all don't want to hear about it. And if you mention the dirty word of incest or psychosurgery, human rights violations, abuse, neglect and fraud, oh, that's not Australia. That's the lucky country. They don't do that there. That's before we even talk about the Indigenous. How many of those are under guardianship orders in WA? How many of those having surgery and being locked up for 20 years? I know such a lady. I've told everyone that I know that lady. I have her phone number. No one wants to know. No one wants to help her. She will never get out without a lawyer. Where are these lawyers? Gee, let's look at that. Every law firm in WA cannot not assist with any matter that I've put to them or 5 other disabled people because they have a conflict of interest. They have got government contracts. They cannot act. There's only 3 of those organisations in the state. If they're all conflicted out, where do we go? Eastern states, disability legal services and advice lines. We don't have funding to do WA. You have to go back to WA. WA is all conflicted out. You have nowhere to go. No wonder the suicide rate is going up.
It's an absolute disaster. And basically anywhere that you do go to is basically just another arm of the people that you're going to complain about anyway. So you basically have the police policing themselves all the way along.
Yes, they're related to someone on a board that is involved with funding or making decisions about funding. There's well, it's a robo-debt on speed. Is the only way I would describe it. It's robo-debt turbo. They're on turbo with this matter. This would be funding the NDIS, a public trustee racket across the country at $30 billion in asset pool, and they're charging their estate 16.7% per annum. That's funding the NDIS. So when they're complaining and bitching about the NDIS funding, they're stealing our homes and their liberty, and the taxpayers paying for it because the public trustee is self-funded. They don't get paid unless they get a victim on the books. So that's paying across the country, state and territories, the NDIS funding. There is no blowout because there is no, whoever's doing their accounting, what is it, KPMG and co, who's doing the funding and saying that they're over budget? No, they're not. Public trustees funding it through the stealing of their homes. So what are they going to do with all these people that are then homeless? Where are they going to go? Where are we going to go?
No, it's pretty simple. It's like this. If you're absolutely broke and you're sleeping on somebody's lounge, they're not interested in you whatsoever. If you've received some sort of compensation, if you've got some sort of payout on the horizon, or you've put your head up on display and stood up to them for any of the wrongdoings that they've actually done, then you become a target. It's all.
There's no whistleblower protection for private citizens. Only if you work for a business. So every private citizen like me, there's no whistleblower protection. So, and I'm thinking, gee, that's really bad in this country. There's no protection. So you've got limited protection if you under the Public Disclosure Act and Whistleblowers Act, but that's when you're working for that business. But when you're a private citizen, you've got none. There are no laws that protect you. There's no First Amendment rights like in America, where you speak out. There's no. We're in the dark ages here. So if you talk about disability abuse, aged care abuse, Indigenous abuse, the three topics that they don't want to talk about, well, then the problem is you need to have a psych evaluation. You need to have a psych assessment. We're going to do a psych report about you in your absence behind closed doors, and we're going to declare you to be schizophrenic. And I went, but you can't. You can't tick a box saying this is in compliance with the Federal Circuit Court rules when it's not, because I wasn't there. That's
so tell me, Alana, how do we fix this situation? What would you do?
I have uncovered it at such a large scale across 3 states. So the problem is deep. There's a lot of conflicts.
Would you agree that it all needs to be federalised?
Yes, they've got to have someone to answer to. There needs to be an independent inspector over these institutions or over mental health in general, because the restraints and the abuse of mental health patients has been going on a long time. I didn't know that the stats were higher for disabled females with any surgeries or restraints. I didn't know that. So it's a femicide, if you will. So there needs... if everyone is conflicted out and cannot speak out, and it takes a disabled person to put her life on the line with death threats because of what I've uncovered, then it's pretty bad already. There's no actual legislated Human Rights Act in the country. There hasn't been. It's a pseudo law, kind of like their pseudoscience with their mental illness. So our human rights law are not compliant with international human rights and international treaties. We're not protected. We think we are. So we have to go international to get our rights protected here. Those international treaties and organisations and parties need to actually do inspections, which recently with the OCAT, they were refused. So you couldn't even speak with them. They were cancelled. So on the ground, I think creating awareness is the first thing. But all these organisations, I would cut all their funding. They're all complicit to the abuse, and you have to start again. And now NDIS has jumped on the bandwagon because they've said, well, that mental health organisation, that disability organisation, they've been doing it as a not-for-profit for 20 years and got away with it. And they're doing their audits saying they're advocating. Well, if they were doing so much advocating, how come all the mental health wards are full of disabled people? While they're double dipping with their NDIS, saying that they're in the community. No, it's not working. And so they all have to be scrapped. Pay me and I'll get them out.
Massive cash grab.
Because they're actually not no one inspects any facility. None. There's thousands of them around the country. Not one organisation or body oversees the treatment of these victims behind closed doors. Silence breeds contempt. What's really going on behind those doors? We actually don't know. The data is suppressed. But we're paying for it. The taxpayers are paying for it. So there's a lot. We don't want another inquiry. We don't want another royal commission. We want people on the ground now investigating. And we need lawyers because they're killing these people. It's a legal minefield. And if the lawyers got on board, then the media would get on board. Then the government would be forced to respond. Currently, the lawyers aren't interested because we're kind of like a minority group, and it's like we'll follow the Brittany Higgins case forever. And when I ring those law firms that are covering her case, I say, well, what I've uncovered and what they're doing to me is so much worse. You need to pick this up. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't have a packet full of cash, and I don't have a media interviewing me every 5 seconds about an allegation. So it's messed up. Society is messed up. You know, this is what we're battling now, and what I've taken upon myself is a David and Goliath battle. And I had to. I had no choice. The lady that they incarcerated, because that's what it is, it's a prison, she said it's her 80th hospitalisation in 10 years of being under a guardianship order. And I said, 80th? I said, what the hell? Oh, well, if I don't take their meds, or if I don't answer the phone, they call the police and they come around and arrest me, chuck me in the paddy wagon, and they lock me up in the psych ward. And that's it. And I said, they can't do that. Well, you don't know who we're dealing with. I said, well, who are we dealing with? Oh, don't get involved. Well, I found out what I'm dealing with. And it's very bad. And it's not getting the news. It's not being spoken about. The NDIS acts like a crime family with other smaller families around it that work for it. All the little providers and everybody else who works under that brand or under that name,
are just like
the main four service providers. They're implicated in what I've uncovered, without naming names. Then you've got their family members, their relations, their friends who are plan managers or coordinators or managers of NDIS as executive team. It runs deep.
I'm seeing people being threatened just like they would be if it was a mobster on the other side end of the phone. Yeah. If you do this, I will sue you for defamation. If you do that, I will sue you for this. If I, hear about this from another person, I'm going to take you to court. You can't defend yourself. You can't tell anybody about what's going on. Look, I'm sure a lot of people get into these types of positions with all of the best interests, they want to do the right thing by people. But there is a great percentage, and I mean, I don't want to say most of them, but from what
75%,
most of them honestly don't want to do anything. They'll roll up in a car, they'll sit in the car for 20 minutes, half an hour, looking at their phone. They'll walk into they might take somebody shopping and have a feed while they're sitting there, and then they just drop them off home. Nobody wants to mow lawns. Nobody wants to actually do any of the things that people need to maintain their homes so that they can stay in them. And when you're under these types of things, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to find the best way possible to stay in your home for the longest amount of time possible. You're not looking for somebody to come in and look for all the things they can do to weasel you out of your home. And at the
majority of cases, there's a complaint. There's a complaint about a service.
They can, and they say, well, look, I'm sorry, this guy doesn't have capacity to look after his home or her home. The yard's a mess, the lawn's a mess. They're not keeping the home tidy enough. Into a nursing home they go. They sell off their home so that they can pay for their own existence in the nursing home. And within no time, they're broke.
Yeah. The segregated disability accommodation, as I call it, SDAs. It's not supported disability, it's segregated disability accommodation. Those service providers are getting a shitload of cash to build these homes, 4-bedroom, and they're renting out one room to a person on NDIS on disability who the public trustee has sold their home, $1,200 a fortnight for one room.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And then you actually ask them to, look, we've had a client come in that was a multi-millionaire. Just recently, in the last couple of weeks, she received a message from her provider saying, your mother's funds have dried up. She's broke. Now, where did our money go to? What has mum's money been spent on? Can you give me an itemised account so we know where, because it was a substantial amount of money. No, we don't have to give you that, and we won't be giving you that.
That's right. They don't answer to anybody. The federal government says it's
she has to go into a facility, and they're going to sell her home over the next, if they haven't already put it on the market.
Yes, I heard a case last month.
Where's the Prime Minister?
Doesn't answer. Where's Shorten? Doesn't answer. Where's Elbow? Doesn't answer. They all don't answer. That's the whole problem. They don't answer. The other issue is all these people who are dictating the rules and regulations, they don't have any lived experience of trauma, poverty, or violence. They're all white privileged males who have been college educated from a two children, 2-parent home, living in the fairies, la la land. I'm sorry, they haven't experienced the threat of anything that we've lived through, so they've got no idea, but they're making all these gag laws and rules, and when you try to explain, no, this is harmful, this is very sexist, it's like we're in the 70s, we've just got the vote, because the main target are females. Where are all these women that have got in power? Why are they not standing up? You know why? They don't have no lived experience. They're privileged too, and they're never going to be at risk of the public trustee coming after them and taking their assets because of their position. They're coming after the vulnerable who have got poor trauma histories, who are estranged from their families, who have always been on the pension because of injury, work cover injury, or car accident in my case. They're not coming after Julie Gillard. They're not coming after her. They're not going to say she lacks capacity. So we have no standing and we have no voice because there is no one standing up for us saying we have a voice. Where are they? They don't exist. So we're going to keep battling and fighting along like we did back in the 50s because nothing's changed. I'm sorry to say. Nothing's changed.
So you're back to court again very, very soon. Where to next? I mean, if you don't have any luck in court, where does that leave you?
There will be no justice in this court. There's too many conflicts in this state. So it will be on appeal. It'll be out of this state. I've been fighting this matter since 2013. 10 years. The stress of it brought on breast cancer when I had a negative BRCA gene. So I only got cancer because of stress. Why? The bigger question is they're giving $60 million in funding in WA alone through the various legal organisations. No one's got any availability. And I'm vulnerable. I'm on their highest level of criteria for assistance. I qualify. I pass the merit test and the asset test. I pass every test, but there's no funding. So where is this funding going? Where's it going? It's going nowhere.
That's an incredible question.
It's not representing any disabled people. You know, how many reports do they need to read about because they just throw them in the bin? They know that we're the most targeted group in the country. They're not listening. They're not listening to the Indigenous either. They're now going after their homes. That's a high increase of Indigenous disabled who are on NDIS that they're now coming after. We know how they've been with the Indigenous past and how well they've treated them. Oh my God! Now they're doing NDIS. Geez, it's getting worse, not better. It's been getting progressively worse in the last 4 years. So it's not just this government; it's the one before. Hasn't just happened. I don't see any improvements, and they don't want to sit down and talk about it because it doesn't happen and doesn't exist, and we're too busy, and we'll get back to you. Unless you have a huge following and you're a face in the media and you work for Parliament once, then we'll talk to you. So that means, I don't know, that's 23 million odd said citizens that they don't want to hear about. You know, I've got elderly people that come to me saying they're trying to steal my home and claim that I've got dementia. They're not in WA, they're interstate. There's no one helping us. There's no lawyer helping us because we've got no money because we're under public trustee. We have one of the most highest numbers of lawyers in the world per capita. They're not representing the aged. They're not representing the disabled. So they're all ableist because how many disabled lawyers do you know? I don't know. I know one in the country. How many elderly geriatric lawyers do you know? Once they start getting that age, they retire. So, and they just haven't lived the experience of the trauma that we've lived through. So they've got no idea. You're going into the Ivy Towers and you're telling them what's going on, and they say the police wouldn't do that. The government wouldn't do that. The public trustee wouldn't do that. NGIS wouldn't do that. No, you got proof. You got proof. They're living in a different world.
The government will do anything and everything, whatever the heck they like. It doesn't matter what 25 million Australians think or want or choose. We've got a Communist Party style regime in charge right now, and whatever Albo says goes, pretty much. If you could speak with the Prime Minister right now, what message would you like to give to him?
What message would I like to give him? He's a sexist, ableist, knobhead, to be quite blunt, because I'm furious because his office ignores you, and you know what's going on against female disabled people who have trauma, which 1 in 3 do. He knows about this. He's ignoring it. They're doing inquiries and reports every 5 seconds, but does he come on the ground? Can you speak with him? Can you raise these issues with him? No, you get pork barreling, you get buck passing. That's not my department, that's your department. Half of these people don't have internet when they say just send us an email. They're telling a disabled person to send them an email when they can't use their arms. They're telling an elderly woman who's 75 who doesn't know how to use a computer to send them an email. So you've got disability discrimination that's rampant, and you've got age discrimination that's rampant. If they took all the complaints, they would be doing another inquiry / Royal Commission that'll take another 10 years to get to the bottom of how bad it is. So, you know, a start would be all these funded advocates that tens of millions of dollars across the country who are doing nothing and not accountable to the Charities Act, They're not accountable to the government, because the government looks good because, oh, we're paying all this out. Of the taxpayer money, we're paying it all out. So they're getting their voice heard. Take it all off them and start up independent advocates who actually do want to speak out and hold them to account, because that's what a so-called democracy is. Because currently it's not working. So what I would say to him is, he knows about the public trustee abuse, neglect and fraud because it's funding the NDIS. And when is he going to stop the annihilation of disabled?
Well, it's a very broken system, and it's going to take quite a lot to fix it at this point, if not just to replace it. I really do hope that we can start to make some headwinds very soon, because the victims just keep on coming steady and fast. I mean,
there's no human rights lawyers that are out there speaking out about this publicly. Why is that? Because you need to fight them and name and shame them in an open court of law, so you can hear what they're doing. Where are the human rights lawyers? There's a lot of them, but they're not taking on the hard cases. They don't want to deal with us. The government doesn't want to deal with us. So they're wondering why the suicide rate's going through the roof. And the homeless rate is going through the roof, because they're running away from the public trustee. And they're free on the street. They're free. So then what's going to happen? You've got all these homeless people. You've got all these people who are traumatized severely by the system. They're going to turn anti-government. And what's going to happen? You're going to have anarchy. They need to survive because they've had their home stolen. The government ignored them. How are they going to eat? They don't want to be on a pension because that gives them an address. They're on a homeless benefit. No wonder there's a surge of break-ins. They're not connecting the dots. They've created the event. Now these poor individuals have to survive. It's not a sudden increase of crime. There's a sudden increase of public trustee abuse that's been ignored, which is triggering the crime. Because they got to live. They got to eat.
And a surge of poverty caused by a broken system.
That's right. But, you know, the average man on the street, he's going to have his shop broken into, going to have his car stolen. He's going to pay. Then that'll feed the insurance companies. So they're all benefiting and profiting. But the underlying cause of that, well, had they asked us, then we would give them the answer, but they don't consult with us. So I'm seeing a surge in all these, violent home assaults, burglaries, cars, etc. It's increased. It's not about people losing their jobs. It's about people losing their liberty and freedom and their own asset. The women that I've uncovered, they all had their own home. It was fully paid off. And now they've got zero. Not 1 cent. Not 1 cent. They're given $5 a day to live on out of their pension. So they're taking every system. They're taking the home, they're taking the federal pension, then they're taking the federal NDIS. Then they're billing the taxpayer $1,500 a day for a bed, a mental health bed. We've got the dearest mental health bed in the country, 2.5 times that of over east. A mental health bed in Sydney or Melbourne is only $600. Yet we've got 2.5 times the receivership of mental health patients. So that's how bad we are. We're twice as expensive, and we're twice as bad because they keep going back every 28 days. So it's clearly not working, and we'll throw another 50 million, 100 million at the same issue that's not working.
Yeah, just keep throwing good money after bad, and that's exactly what they do.
And they could be building houses.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Look, we saw the same thing going. They were given billions of dollars to take care of the homelessness issues. They could have paid for all the homeless people in the place to bloody have motel rooms for the 4 years with the amount of money that they squandered. And the place is worse than ever. Every single part of our country, really, if you want to have a good look, once it starts to get dark, if there's a stairwell where someone can sleep, somebody's sleeping under it. The only reason people aren't sleeping under most of the bridges in New South Wales is because the government put obstructions there so you can't sleep under the bridges anymore.
You can't sleep over here. They give you a fine. They give you a fine for being homeless, and then they ask you for your address, and then they go, even if you've got no fixed address, well, we can't give you the fine because we need an address. And so they go, I live under the bridge. Well, then you've got to move on, or you're getting the $100 fine for sleeping under the bridge. And that's your police.
$100 fine that you're not going to be able to pay because we're not actually going to give you any type of financial assistance because you don't have an address where we can come and pick you up from.
Yes. But we have legal aid, we have Aboriginal legal aid, we have all these aids that are doing. The incarceration rate is increasing. The guardianship rate is increasing. The funding for legal aid is increasing. Gee, okay, I don't know how good my maths is, but that doesn't add up. If the funding across the country is increasing with legal aid, then the incarceration rate would be depreciating, going down, and so would the guardianship applications. They'd be going down because they're being represented by legal aid or law access or whatever else, whatever community centre you want to call it. They're not. The numbers are increasing. So it's wasted money yet again. Why don't they do an audit on how many disabled people have gotten away from guardianship orders done by legal aid or any community-run organisation? You'd be in the 0.1% category. Majority their legal aid is against the disabled person. They're representing the state to sell their home. In the possession orders, the legal aid is representing the state. They're saying, yes, we agree to sell her house. But they could have been on the other side and fought against that in a mental health tribunal, or appealed a possession order on their behalf. No, they did not. They got in bed with the public trustee. So again, the conflicts of interest keep continuing. So there is nowhere to go. And the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission do not get involved in matters that are presently before the court. They also do not get involved in anything that involves disabled people because, drum roll, the courts and tribunals in this country applied for an exemption from the disability discrimination laws as well as the age discrimination laws. So when it's based on disability or age, blatant discrimination, they have applied, the courts and tribunals, I think it was 40 years ago, for an exemption to not apply the Disability Discrimination Act and not apply the Aged Care Discrimination Act. And the Human Rights Commission went, that's fine, good job.
Unbelievable. Well, you're clearly a very bright and driven lady. They've bitten off a little bit more than they can probably chew with you, because I can see that you're obviously not going to go down without it being... They're doing a
Britney Spears. What they did to Britney Spears, and now she's suing them for 10 years. Yeah, she was a child performer, so was I. They pulled that stunt on her. She had to go public. Well, I didn't want to go public, but, I thought, well, I've been performing a long time. I haven't performed recently because they just depress what I'm fighting. But yeah, they're pulling a Britney Spears on me, or like the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson. They did a guardianship order upon him. The threat of guardianship upon me is just such an insult to my intelligence. It's just beyond me. And the fact that I've gone on the record and got justice, as they called it, and then to throw that in my face and say, well, we're going to use that now. Thanks for telling us. We protect you because we suppress everything, but then they dig it up 23 years later to say we're going to use that against you. It's just unthinkable.
Look, eventually what's going to happen is, because of stuff like this, people are going to be terrified and they're not going to report crimes. You're not going to go and tell someone that you were raped if you weren't physically injured beyond the point where you needed medical attention, because you're going to be terrified that 6 years from now they're going to use that rape against you and take your home, take your bank accounts, your inheritance, yes, whatever. You're going to have people out there that break a leg or an ankle that'll just go, well, I guess I'm going to be strapping a splint to that.
Yes.
Because I'm sure as hell not going near them. I don't want them to know that I'm going to need physio, or that, I'm not going to be able to get around my home without the use of a cane, just in case they come and take my home away from me and my bank accounts.
Yes. Yes. Look, I'm telling women, do not report rape, do not report incest, do not go on the record, because now I've worked out they pay you with Peter, and then they want to take it back with Paul. And that's exactly what they're doing, and they've been doing it for a long time. Just no one's talking about it. So it's not just car accidents, incest, victims of crime, work cover, all of those compensation. Now they're doing it with the redress scheme. There's no protections for the redress scheme. Public trustee know how much you've been given, because the same Department of Justice funds the redress scheme. Oh my God. You need a private lawyer. You need to sue whatever's happened to you privately, not a government system. I did private lawyer. A private system. I thought I was protected because we had an ironclad suppression. They bypassed that too. So no one's safe. I'm telling everyone, do not report anything. Do not. It'll be used against you in a court of law to declare that you're a 2-year-old. And that's what public trustee administration financial management orders are. You can't access your money, you can't travel, you can't marry, who you can talk to. Then the guardian does the medical, who's allowed to visit you, where you're allowed to live, what you're allowed to spend your money on. Oh, the list is endless.
Look, picture yourself in a violent relationship. Now, it doesn't even have to be physical violence. It can be emotional violence. Now, you're in a relationship where somebody gives you a pittance out of your payment. When your pension comes in, you might be lucky to get $5 or $10. The rest of your money you never see. You just get told that it's going to pay your way, and that's the end of the story. So you can't go out anywhere. Anytime you actually want to spend a little bit more than that, you've got to ask for some money. Can I get a haircut? Can I go and get my nails done? Can I see a chiropractor or an osteopath? No, we can't afford you to do that. If you were in a relationship where that was going on, you would know that that's financial abuse. You would know that that's domestic abuse. You would leave that relationship. Now, the problem is when guardianship or the public trustees or the NDIS become involved in your life, they're your abuser now, and you can't escape them. You decide you need to go and get a lawyer and that you want out. You've got to ask them for money for the lawyer, and you've got to tell them what the money's for, and as if they're going to give you money to pay for a lawyer to get away from them. I mean, this is a vicious, vicious cycle.
We have no legal protections. We might as well be 2-year-olds, because that's how they're treating us, and that's what they're doing to us. And I don't have my gaffer tape, but really, we have no voice. We might as well walk around with gaffer tape on. No one wants to hear that they're doing this. No one wants to believe that they could stoop this low. Well, they are. I didn't know that they have never stopped doing lobotomies. They don't call it lobotomies. They don't bill it on the Medicare benefit scheme as lobotomy. It's hidden way under epilepsy. Because no one's going to pay. The government's not going to want that on the record, that they're paying for these. So, yeah, is this little China, little Russia? Because to me, it is. It's hidden. The mortality rates are hidden. So, yeah, they'll cull us all. We're not important. We're not taxpayers. The taxpayers are the ones who need to get mad. Because if they have a car accident tomorrow, or they have an injury of any sort, work cover, they'll be under this same microscope. And then they'll wake up and go, oh, now we realise what they're saying. You know, with the females, they're using the trauma history as the major income to get them under public trustee. With the men, it's work cover, car accidents. Oh no, they're never going to recover from a broken leg. They need a quickie referral to the tribunal for a guardianship application. And then they recover, and then they're spending thousands on lawyers to get them out of their system. Yeah, it's a very evil system. It's a pseudoscience. There is no scientific test that can ever prove or identify that you've got a mental illness. They're just making up crap. It was exposed in America a long time ago with the CCHR International and MAD in America. People need to be aware of those organisations that have been calling out this pseudoscience for a long time. Now they've got their pseudo-law to back it up. They're also chemically lobotomizing them with 30 neuroleptics a day.
Now, I myself experienced a little bit of time on Largactil. They had me on that for a couple of weeks, which basically shuts down the frontal lobe of your brain. Anytime they can't deal with, I mean, this was in my teens. Anytime they can't diagnose anything, anytime you become a problem, too much to handle, too hard to diagnose, they just throw whatever pills at you and until something sticks. And then when something sticks, they go, oh, there you go, that's what you needed, you're fixed. Off you go. Now,
it's all pharmaceutical.
I would have been taking that drug probably for, months on. And God knows what it would have done to me, because after I took that drug for, I believe it was about 3 weeks, it took me a good 6 months to get myself right. I mean, I wasn't crazy before they put me on it, but I damn well near was after it.
The suicide rates increase every year that they're on those. It shuts down. It shuts down every system: the endocrine, the immune, the central nervous system. They're walking zombies. They don't know what day it is. They don't know what they did yesterday or 5 minutes before. So they're actually creating an illness. They go in there as trauma victims, They're raped in there. They're assaulted in there. There's no segregation wards in this state, by the way. Males and females are together. So you're putting trauma victims with males who are then hyped up on drugs, and with males it goes the other way. They can get hyper, and so none of that's getting reported either. So it's an unsafe environment, and they're just pummeling. They're just pummeling all these pharmaceutical drugs. They're not providing counselling, so there's no CBT therapy. There's no natural holistic remedies. There's no animal therapy. There's no music therapy. There's no art therapy. Everything that a person on the outside needs to recover from depression or trauma and take their mind off it, they're putting them in a locked room, a ward, with no window, with a fluoro light. And they're wondering why their vitamin D levels are down to 10 instead of 70, and why they're acting out and screaming and saying they're unhappy in here. Well, they're in a concrete cell on a prison mattress, but they've not committed a crime. The only crime was trusting the medical system. Try getting a government psychiatrist any action against them by APRA. They'll go after William Bay. They'll go after William Bay. They won't go after these government psychiatrists that are prescribing these drugs that are causing severe side effects and doing psychosurgery on the sneak. They won't take a complaint because they state quite bluntly that's not going on because those people are protected. They're under guardians, and the guardians wouldn't tick that box to do that. The guardians are never involved on the ground what's going on day to day. They don't know what's going on. They've got, like 200, 300 case files per guardian, last time I checked. So they don't, and when the hospital doesn't get in contact with them, they just tick the box and decide what they do anyway. So there is no oversight and there's no interaction. There's no communication, and so the hospital blames the guardian blames the hospital, and they all blame the public trustee, and then they all blame, and on and on it goes. It's just like dealing with government. Not on my watch, didn't happen. Talk to him.
It's like musical chairs. The only difference is they're not actually taking away a chair. They're just jumping up and skipping around a chair and then jump up and skip around another chair, and the blame just shifts and shuffles and shifts and shuffles. And if someone had just walked into Centrelink and they're talking to the psychologist in there and they start bringing up words like guardianship and public trustees, and what would you suggest for that person to do?
Stay away from hospitals, stay away from government social workers, and you can be on the NDIS if you're plan managed, but you can't be if you're NDIS managed, because their service providers are the problem. They're referring people to the guardian and the public trustee once there's a complaint of poor service. So I've got a long list of names. I can give them another time because that list is getting bigger. They've had some wins where people have died in their care and they've been sued. So the name is it's on the public record. But they're really real predators. And they're some of the largest organisations. But yeah, you can be on disability like me and NDIS plan managed, but you need a strong network around you. Because when they come after you, then yeah, you've got the fight of your life. You're David and Goliath. And all I would recommend is speak out. Speak out. Talk to someone like me or yourself that actually cares. Because the more that speak out, this underground of abuse will stop. And it's not going to stop until this underground of abuse is brought to the surface. And currently, it's not. I would walk out of that Centrelink office and I would phone a friend, or I'd go online, find someone like us, type in the search engine like I do, guardianship abuse. See how many stories come up, how many profiles, how many different social media. There's always a hit. It's magic. Guardianship abuse. Someone is going through what I'm going through, or the threat of it, and we need to get together because numbers mean action.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alana Smith.
Thanks, Wayne.